How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with Brad Williams. Brad Williams is a lot of different things. He is a retired professional athlete in the triathlon space. He is also the current sponsored athlete program director with Precision Fuel and Hydration, as well as the ambassador program director and social media manager. So he wears a lot of hats. Among that, he's also working with Slow Twitch in their sales department and the different things that they do there, which you can hear about at the end of the episode, and so many other things. We have a really good conversation that ranges from coaching to being a father to life in the military to doing his first 70.3 in China. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Brad Williams. Huge giveaway alert. First of all, thank you so much to Synergy Wetsuits for sponsoring today's episode. It is awesome because they are giving away the Sin Skin 3, which is a state-of-the-art swim skin that'll make you faster when you are in the water coming into T1. So here's how you enter that. First of all, there will be a link to our Instagram in the show notes listing out these 5 different things you got to do to get in on the giveaway. But they are, first, you got to follow Stupid Questions and Synergy Wetsuits on Instagram. You got to like the giveaway post, tag 3 friends in the comments, sign up for our email newsletter at stupidquestions.show. There's a link at the top of the website and at the bottom where you can drop your email there. And then the 5th thing is leave a review of the podcast on your preferred platform of choice. And again, that link is going to be in the show notes. Go check it out on our Instagram page, Stupid Questions Podcast, Instagram, and it'll be pinned at the top of that Instagram as well. So thank you so much to Synergy for sponsoring today's episode and partnering with us on this giveaway. I look forward to seeing who is going to win. Nice. You're in the pain cave?
Yeah, office, pain cave, dual set area.
I love it. I have a random question for you. How often have you cleaned the floors from all of the sweat that has been gained over the years?
We have cleaners that come in once every 2 weeks, so I think they scrub the floors then. But
nice.
Yeah, we've been here for 2 years, so it's not seen too much usage.
Yeah. Cool, man. Sweet. Well, we'll get started. First of all, just thank you so much, Brad, for coming on and just making time. I know you've probably got a super busy schedule with all of the different hats that you're wearing, but first, just want to say thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, Seth. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So my first question for you is, and feel free to be as detailed or as broad stroked as you want, but who is Brad Williams?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming, and I didn't think about it, but
that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back a ways, so I think it kind of sets a bit more of the tone. I was just a geeky high school kid that happened to be on the basketball and football team because I went to a small school. But by being on the team, I primarily sat on the bench. Saw very little playing time in both sports throughout high school, and also raced cars growing up as well. So not necessarily an athletic background per se, but definitely was always involved in sports. Then I went into the Air Force for 10 years, got into triathlon through that journey, and that's kind of where I caught the triathlon bug, and then raced triathlon for 15 years. And then COVID hit and kind of changed the path of life, I guess you could say, for a lot of people, more so for me. And I have 3 small kids, 7, 6, and 4, so they keep me quite busy as well. So, and then I'm involved in the industry, and I think we'll get into that a bit more, but it's kind of the transition of life, I guess, over the last 37, almost 38 years.
Yeah. So a couple of questions from that. So it sounds like Brad is a well-versed man of a life experience from all different areas. But you mentioned that you rode the bench a lot, and I read that on kind of your parting farewell document, I guess, on your website where you were kind of outlining a bit of your career. But riding the bench was something that you identified with from a young age. Like, how did that affect you at that age and then growing forward? Did you ever have any?
Yeah, I mean, we had good teams. I grew up on good teams, even though we were a small school. Sure. I was the second tallest guy at 6'1" in high school.
Wow.
And even then, still didn't see much playing time. But yeah, I was fortunate to be around good athletes. We had a few guys that went on to play junior college football, another guy that went on to play D1 baseball. So we weren't a slouch of a school by any means. We made the playoffs both junior and senior year in high school for the small division that we were in. But yeah, I mean, I was fortunate to have great coaches, and I think that's what shaped shaped things further down the road for me more than the playing time that I would have seen, was just the programs that I was fortunate to grow up in.
Yeah.
Our basketball program more so, that me and the coach still stay in contact. He stays in contact with a lot of the guys.
Oh,
It's a
really?
family is what was built there more so than just
Mm.
a team. And that's a generation. He'd been coaching there since he was 19, and he just retired 2 years ago. I
Wow.
think he coached there for 25 years straight. So
Wow.
yeah, definitely very much a family that was built there, and I think that shaped a lot of the values that I carried forward through sport and through life. Was just the upbringing and on those teams, whether that was playing or not playing, and just being involved in that environment.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I was going to ask this later, but you made such a good segue into it. I got to ask it now. You said something in that same document along the lines of your greatest accomplishments never came from necessarily any of your athletic endeavors or successes, but more you were more proud of the relationships and long lasting connections that you made. And it sounds like that may have started from a very young age when you were on these team sports.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that the basketball coach has been a great mentor through life, and um, I think triathlon is just such a special place with the relationships that you form.
Hmm.
More so, I think I was fortunate to race in Asia a lot, and a lot of my peers that when we'd race over there, we'd sit around at breakfast table for an hour and a half and eat buffet and just talk. And it's a much different environment over there for the pro athletes.
Yeah.
It's a much closer environment. You're not spread out to Airbnbs all around town or the race venue. You're typically at one or two hotels, and everybody gets together before the races and after the races. And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of those relationships were formed. And then just the sport in general is the amount of racing that's done, and how you see people quite often throughout the year at some of the bigger races,
Hmm.
and especially the people that you train with. I mean, you're spending a lot of time with those individuals, and so
Yeah.
that's, I think, what forms those long lasting relationships, is when you're training 150, 200 hours on the bike a year with somebody that
Yeah.
you're fortunate to get to know them at a
Yeah,
pretty
for
deep
sure.
level.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I joke with people because it seems so. I come from a pretty organized religious background growing up, and there's a lot of these phrases that get tossed around, like, "Oh, it's a small world, and even smaller within the church," type of thing. But I figure it's the same with triathlon. Like, it really does seem in a lot of ways like a religion because you're making all these pilgrimages to these races, and you are all working toward one eventual goal. Typically, like it's very interesting, like the parallels there that I've noticed over the years.
Yeah, very much. I mean, you're traveling all over, seeing a lot of the same people, and all kind of aiming for the same goals.
Yeah. So I want to dive. You mentioned something I didn't know about racing cars. I believe is something you said. So please tell me
Yeah.
about that. That sounds super fun.
Yeah, so I grew up racing quarter midgets, which is like a go kart with a cage on it.
Yeah.
So it's a smaller sprint car with no wing. I was fortunate to race from 11 or 12 until 16.
Oh, that's
My
awesome.
family is not super wealthy by any means, so once the money ran out, we kind of stopped racing. And
Yeah.
me and my dad have both followed motorsports for since then, basically. And we still have a lot of friends that are still racing. So me and my dad would make an annual trip every year down to Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's a big indoor race.
Oh, cool.
We did that for about 6 years, and then our friends that were racing there stopped racing, and we still have some other friends that race there. But that was kind of an annual trip that we'd make. So it's been a good bond for us to have and kind of get away and do some trips, just father son trips. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun to grow up doing that. Made a lot of lifelong friends there as well, just traveling around from different races throughout the state of California, and
Yeah.
we traveled out to Colorado at one point as well. So yeah, it was good. It definitely kind of instilled some good values of hard work and stuff early on, and just yeah, it was paved some paths, and it's been good.
Yeah. Yeah. And even staying calm under pressure. Do you think that you're a good driver now? Would you consider yourself a pretty good driver?
I think a lot of people would argue that, but yeah, I think cell phone usage has obviously come into play a lot
Mm.
uh, in later times or in more current times, and something now that I just have a holder for my phone. It makes it to where I don't have it, and I think when I travel and in rental cars, it becomes a bit harder to try to put it down. But it's something that I've definitely broken a habit of. But I think when we look at it, when I travel with some of the guys that I work with, in the UK, people typically don't drive as early as we do in the US.
Hmm.
And a lot of them growing up in bigger cities that have great public transport, they don't drive at all until they're forced to. So I look back at being able to have driven now for 22 years in a full size car and even a little bit more experience racing cars. I forget sometimes that other people in other parts of the world haven't been driving as long as us. And
Yeah.
there are some bad drivers that
Yeah.
it's just because they don't lack of experience and lack of time in the car, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you have 3 kids now, so I feel like you probably have graduated to the bigger suburban slash minivan, something to haul around the family in. But do you have a car, like a project car or something that you're working on or have had in the past?
No. I have a 2013 Toyota Sienna minivan, Toyota
Nice.
Sienna minivan. I'm definitely a big fan of the minivan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing about minivan life.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody's considering getting one, I'm definitely a big proponent, especially as an endurance sports athlete as well. Being able
Sure.
to fold down the back seat and shove a couple bikes fully into the back of the minivan. It's definitely a nice perk of it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, going back a little bit, you were talking about when you were doing different racing, you were traveling around. It sounds like mostly West Coast. Did you grow up out there in the West Coast?
Yeah, I grew up out in California. I was born and raised in the Central Valley, so
Okay.
Modesto area. Stayed there until high school, and then out of high school left for the Air Force. So that's kind of when the real travel started.
Yeah, for sure. So, do you have siblings?
I have a brother who's 2.5 years younger. He's a police officer in Santa Clara, so it's a good location to be for him. He looks over
Yeah.
the Levi Stadium for some counterintelligence stuff there, and then
Oh, wow.
I have a sister who's 17 years younger than me, half
17
sister.
years.
Yeah, so
Oh, wow.
she was born my junior year of high school, and then I left after I graduated. So we
Yeah,
didn't
wow.
grow up too much in the house together. But when I was back on vacation and leave and stuff, I'd obviously see her then. And
Yeah,
I wouldn't say we have the closest of relationships, but we still stay in contact and do things together. So
sure. How old are you?
I turned 38 in March. So
Okay. Yeah, that is a big gap. I have my youngest sister. We're 12 years apart, but 17, like that's a big jump. Is it your parents were just like, oops, or was it like
no,
a
it was
documented
definitely
decision?
planned. It
Really?
was just my mom and stepdad waited a bit. I think they would have been together 10 years before they decided to have her. So
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Neat. We got a wide ranging family. That'd be awesome. Maybe your sister can help take care of you when you get older.
I don't think she'd be up for that, but
Yeah.
times could change.
Yeah, for sure. So you said that you went into the Air Force relatively soon after high school, or you did some kind of early enlistment program, if I read correctly. What kind of led you to make that decision, that point in life?
Yeah, there was a few things. I grew up in a divorced family, so at 7, my parents got a divorce.
Mm,
Lived close together. We bounced back and forth between houses, kind of on a not weekly basis, but there was a schedule. And then my dad had saved up some money for college. My mom was willing to pay for college. I wasn't at a spot where I was mature enough or ready to go to college, in my opinion.
sure.
I didn't really enjoy school per se.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the social life of school and the sports, but I didn't want to just go to college and waste money. And I didn't feel like I was ready. So
Yeah.
the Air Force, it came down between the Air Force and the Navy, and the Air Force looked like a great option. So I think it was late into my junior year or maybe beginning of my senior year that I committed to going. And I think that kind of changed my work ethic through the rest of high school because
Mm,
I knew I already had good enough grades to get in. There was really no pressure to perform at school. I didn't need to take ACTs or SATs. I was just on the path to enlisting in the Air Force. And so probably slacked off a bit more in my senior year than I should
sure.
have. But it's a good way to ride out high school knowing that there was already something set in stone and where I'd be going.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So when you shipped off to go to your whatever the form of basic training is for the Air Force, when you got into it, was it what you expected or was it different?
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing that was too alarming, I guess you could say. It was what I expected. I mean, we were probably looked after a bit more than I expected, a bit more stringent rules than I expected. But yeah, it was it was fine. It was down in Texas in August of 2004, and it's not cool in Texas in August.
Yeah,
So
sweat to
yeah,
death.
yeah, probably could have done some heat acclimation looking back on it before having to go there and march around and stuff. But yeah, it was good.
So I've heard that the Air Force is the easiest form of basic training of all the military branches. Would you agree or disagree?
I mean, I haven't been through the other branches, but I always remind people that they optionally signed on the dotted line that they choose to sign on, and
Yeah.
I think I just so happened to sign on the correct dotted line. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Good deal.
luckily at this time we still have a choice in the U.S. on if we want to serve, and it's still a volunteer force, and
Mm,
you still get to choose. You have some say in what branch you serve in if you're meeting the minimum requirements. So.
yeah. Do you still keep in contact with friends and connections you made during that section of your life?
Yeah, definitely. I'm more so the endurance space.
Hmm.
There's a lot of really good friends throughout multiple branches of the military that I made throughout the 10 years that I served. I would say not as many people that I worked with directly that I stay in contact with. I mean,
Sure.
Facebook's now, or social media is now an amazing tool for that. But
Sure.
I wouldn't say I have any long lasting relationships with coworkers. Most of those long lasting relationships from the military are from triathletes or cyclists or runners.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think I was 2.5 years to my 10 years when I got into sport. And that's all of those relationships from that point forward are ones that I stayed close with. But I think it was last summer I went up and met up with a guy that I was at my first base with. So it's not like
Mm.
uncommon if the timing lines up and we're still in contact, that I'll still see some of the guys from the early days of my career.
Yeah. For those first couple of years, you were saying when you started to, I guess, dabble or get involved in the athletic side of, um, I guess, however you would say it, with the Air Force or the military branches, was that out of self curiosity that you were kind of seeking something out, or did someone tell you about it? Like, how did you find out about it?
Yeah, so there was a flyer that got put up on base, so there was going to be a sprint triathlon in Korea, where I was stationed at the time. One of the Army colonels that was on base, he came from a triathlon background, and he was putting on a race on
Oh,
base. I think
cool.
it was 400-meter pole swim and 12-mile bike and 5K run.
Okay.
I was pretty heavy then, probably the heaviest I'd been. I left for basic at 145. I graduated basic at 160. And I think at that point I was up to 190. So
Just like jacked.
no, like
Okay.
just getting a bit, a bit fat, I guess you could say. And
Okay.
I was doing 2 years in Korea at the time, and I'd been there for almost a year at that point when that kind of flyer came out, and I was going to go home after that race. And I thought, oh, I don't want to go back home and see all my friends and family and have put on 20, 30 pounds. So I decided to do this triathlon. And yeah, I bought like a $200 still Korean road bike that had shifters up on the top tube, and it
Oh
had
yeah.
dual brake setup, kind of like the old school cross brakes, where it had brakes on the hoods, and then it had brakes on the hoods, and then brakes on the drops as well.
Yeah.
So it was a piece of work to say the least.
Yeah.
But just before the race, I ended up getting like a Trek 1200 road bike. Was my second bike.
Okay.
And so I was able to do my first race with that. And I think I put clip-ons on it as well. So yeah, it was that first bike that scared a lot of people. The rear wheel went out of true pretty quickly, and
Oh my goodness.
they hated riding behind me. And I think
Yeah,
I was
just
still
waiting for
probably
it to blow.
riding in basketball shorts and a t-shirt at that time. And we had a decent group of people that were riding with us. So it was there was a good endurance group on the base between
Yeah.
all the sports. So it was good.
You ever miss Korea?
I missed the food.
Oh really?
And I was there at a pretty fortunate time that endurance sports were taking off, and they had a lot of running races. They had a lot of bike races going on, and triathlon was doing pretty well at that point as well. I missed it by just a bit on the triathlon side. And when I say doing well, like they were paying prize money for amateur races, and they had like an elite age group wave that had prize money in triathlon. Kind of when I first got into the sport there, and then the running races had money for top 10 for most running events.
Okay.
Like I think I won $100 at a running race running like a 123 or 125 half marathon. So, I mean, it wasn't the depth of field wasn't deep, and so there was money to be made. And on the biking side, they had an amateur stage race that they put on that coincided with the UCI Tour de Korea, which was like, I think it was a couple steps down of a UCI event, but it was a UCI event they put on, and there was some American teams that would come over as well. But we would race separate to that. They'd have an amateur race, and that had, I want to say that had $30,000 or $40,000 in prize money.
Wow.
That there was 9 or 10 teams competing for. So it was this. They were dumping money into sport at that time, and that was back in. I was there 2007 to 2009, and then I went to Turkey for 15 months, and then came back and was there 2010 to 2012.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a good time to be there. The training was good. The downside was, I mean, we were there as a military defending South Korea, basically. And so there's a lot of exercises for possible war. And that was long 7 to 12 day stretches of work where you didn't have much balance. It was basically 12 to 14-hour work days. And then you were having to get to and from work by foot because they were simulating the war. So there was no like transport that you could use or anything. You had to walk. Occasionally you could get away with riding your bike, but it was pretty uncommon to ride your bike with all your chem gear and fully suited up. So
chem gear as in like chemical warfare gear, like you're
case you gotta. Correct. Yeah, like gas mask and then like the oversuit and stuff. So
wow.
Yeah, it was outside of that. I mean, it was a really good spot. There was always, in the 4 years that I was there was always a good group of people that wanted to swim, bike, and run.
Yeah.
And that made the training environment pretty good. And then the food was good. I still like Korean food, and that's probably the thing I miss the most, I guess, about Korea.
Yeah. Do you regret is a strong word, but I guess I can say regret. Do you regret any of the military stuff that you did? Like, as in terms of the service, or are you like, no, I'm glad I did that?
Yeah, no, I have no regrets there. I mean, I was able to get out of California and kind of living in a dual household and not being mature enough to go to university. Like I said, like those were all things that it was able to help me grow out of. And then I was able to get a bachelor's degree over the 10 years that I was in. So I call it the 10-year program, but it was just me being a bit on the lazy side and trying to navigate moving multiple times and trying to do a degree at the same time and still working and training. And yeah, it was kind of a juggling act, but it's what I originally went in for, was to get school done and see the world. And I have no regrets there. I think accomplished that very much so.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask the question because your first 70.3 you did was in 2009 in China. And I was thinking, as I was reading through some of your stuff, I was like, why in the world would the first one you ever do be in China? But I guess it's because you were stationed in Turkey during that time?
Yeah,
or were you
I was stationed in, it was just before I left to go to Turkey. So that was, cool. I'd done the sprint in June of 2008. And then that was just like the closest 70.3 that was early in the year before I moved. So it was an interesting race, to say the least. It was
let's hear about it.
113 degrees on the run.
My goodness.
It was a very small pro field in the 70.3, and then a larger field in the full for the pros. But I finished, and for some reason, I think the race organizers paid Chris McCormick and Luke McKenzie to come over and do the half. And I remember finishing, and they were still around, and they were talking about how it was the hardest and hottest 70.3 they'd ever done.
Wow.
It gave me hope that it can only be easier from here. And
yeah.
I wouldn't say it was easier from there, but I definitely never faced conditions like that again. So that was, it was crazy. I had like 3rd-degree burns on my back and blisters.
Actually?
Yeah, like sunny side egg blisters. It was bad.
Oh, dude, what? So no sunscreen, or sunscreen? It was just still so intense.
I think there was sunscreen at like the aid stations. I had put some on that morning, but there was no hope, I think, with that kind of heat. So,
sheesh. What part of China was it in?
It's Hainan or Haiku. It was like it's Hainan Island or it's Haiku Island in like the province of one or the other. I can never remember which one is which, but it's one of those two. One's the province and one's like the little island that it was on.
Yeah. Wow, super interesting. So then what was your next race after that? Because that was you weren't a pro at that point. Like you took a few years.
No, I raced amateur for a while. I mean, I got in the sport in 2009, and I didn't start racing professional, or 2008, and I didn't start racing professionally until 2015.
Okay.
So there was no steep trajectory of improvement. It was kind of just a
Yeah.
long path of keeping at it. Next race after that, I think it was probably some small stuff on base when I moved to Turkey, and then I went to 70.3 in Germany and crashed and broke my radial head in my right arm. And so that was one of two crashes that I broke bones in. That was, that was 2009. And then the next one was 2018. But yeah, I kind of raced randomly after from there on, kind of just picked races that either suited my travel schedule back home for vacation or suited where I was living at the time and lined up timing wise. So.
How did you crash? Like what happened?
It was just probably, I think I took a corner too fast and I tried to save it and hop the curb and didn't fully hop the curb and caught the wheel. And,
game over.
Yeah, I still finished the race.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I mean, it's the radial head's like in the elbow area, so it's just like I couldn't move the arm really like and straighten out and stuff, and I didn't have full extension. But yeah, then I was there with a friend from the military, and we ended up going to the military base, and like they X-rayed it, and then flew back to Turkey. I think 2 days later or something.
Wow.
So delayed the trip a little bit, but
it
ended up not being too bad of a recovery from that.
So what was the second crash?
Car pulled in front of me and kind of leaving town in Oxford, middle of the day. Sunny, clear day. I had bright red helmet on and I had a flashing light on the front. And they just turned right in front of me to cross the road to get to a side street. And I hit him right and T-boned him basically into like the hood and front fender, and then like launched over the car and then landed on like right side, right shoulder. So then I landed right side. I think my left arm like flung out because I did my left radial head. So I had left radial head and right clavicle. So I had use of neither arm, and that was way worse than the first accident because not having use of either arm or hand is quite humbling.
Yeah.
So
who took care of you?
So my grandmother was supposed to be coming over to just see our kids at the time, and she was just happened to be on a flight 2 days after my accident, and so she was. That would have been 6 years ago now. So our son was 1 or 2, and our daughter, I think, was just been born. And so she had come over, and then we had just had a switch out between all pairs. And so there was an extra set of hands around the house at the time. And then, I don't know, dating myself now a little bit, but I don't know if you know the name Trevor and Heather Wortell.
I don't.
Yeah, so they were Canadian pros, and Trevor just happened to be coming over to race Ironman Wells. And it was the year that 70.3 Worlds was in South Africa, and Heather was coming. She had raced 70.3 Worlds in South Africa and was coming over to the UK to watch Trevor race in Wells. And so Trevor was staying with us that week, and that was probably the most humbling thing, was not to be able to put on socks. Yeah. And I was going with like Trevor was going to go open water swim somewhere, and I just wanted to get out of the house. And I went to it was the first time I was getting out of the house, and I went to put on socks and I couldn't. Oh. And it was like. It's pretty humbling to have to ask another man to like put on your socks because like my wife was sleeping, my grandmother hadn't arrived yet, and I was like, "Yeah, can you help me put on my socks?" And he just looked at me and like shook his head, and I was like, "Sorry, man, like this is not the plan."
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's good. I mean, that's character development. Anytime we have to do something out of being no other choice, it has to be a humble pie that we eat. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it was that whole process of coming back from that was very humbling. I was just watching Miguel Maddox did his clavicle in a couple of weeks ago, and I was just catching up on their YouTube videos. It brought back some memories, and it was good to see that he got surgery. It's the one regret I have through that process is not pushing for them to operate.
Really?
It delayed. It wasn't healing properly at the beginning, and they wanted to wait and see if it was going to heal, and they waited, and it caused some ongoing issues that I wish I would have got it operated on and kind of pushed a bit more there. So yeah, he looks to be in a much better place than I was in 2 weeks into that process.
Yeah, no, the guy's crazy. In the video, I watched it actually this morning on my trainer ride, and I don't know how long it went from when he's getting out of the operating room to he like is literally on the bike with a pillow, like, and all this stuff just
Yeah, I
so he
think
can pedal for 15 minutes.
it was 2 days. Yeah, I think it was the next day or 2 days after his operation. But yeah,
Crazy.
I think I waited 3 days or 4 days from the accident to start trying to ride. But I was looking at his setup and he had the kicker move, and I was like, that probably would have saved me a lot because my biggest thing was like trying to ride upright with not having a hand on the bars or anything made it to where I wasn't moving, and so like my sit bones got sore like pretty quick because
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't have an arm to like rest on like he did, so
Mm-hmm.
or he does.
He had like 2 or 3 pillows stacked up,
Yeah, I saw
basically.
that. Yeah, he had a good setup there. It's
Yeah.
That's eventually what I got to. Is once the like radial head healed itself a lot faster than the clavicle, so that helped a lot.
Yeah. How long was it before you were in the pool and like doing just kick work or whatever?
Yeah, that kick drill he was doing was bringing back the memories of the bad memories of the process.
Yeah.
I think it was probably I got hit in September. I think it was probably 6 or 8 weeks they wanted me to wait. And it
Okay.
was more so being able to get in and out of the pool that was the problem because not having either arm was kind of the limiting factor there.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Crazy stuff. So then I have a question. With the movement of your, I guess, career, you said you raced for 7 years before kind of making that jump into the pro field. At what point in that journey did you think, I think I can get my pro card? And like that became a goal.
oh, yeah, I think probably I started to have glimpses of it in 2012, maybe 2011, 2012. I started to have some decent races. I think when you look back to where the sport was then, there was more hope for guys that couldn't swim. I think now, if I was in the same position now that I was then, I wouldn't think there was any real opportunity just because of how weak my swim was. But yeah, I think 2011 I had a pretty good race in Kona. It was my second Ironman, and I'd ran pretty well. And for me, I ran pretty well. And I was thinking like, oh, I'm getting okay at this, but I was still getting beat by a lot of the pro women. And I've found that metric to be a pretty good indicator if you're on the verge of being able to go. Either you're continuously winning top amateur, overall amateur at like big races, or you're consistently beating like the top pro women. If you go back and look at its stats, I think it shows that if you're beating the top pro women, you're kind of getting somewhat to the pointy end of the pro men's race as well. Like you're starting to knock on the door of top 10 and top 15s.
Hmm.
And so I used that as well as like just what it was financially going to take.
Yeah.
And then started 2012. At the end of 2012, I moved back to the States from Korea. And for 2013, I laid out like what I would have called the domestic pro schedule,
Mm-hmm.
just to see financially what it would have taken. And that put me racing some of the bigger amateur races in the US at the time. So South Beach, which was down in Florida, was an Olympic distance race. St. Anthony's um, typically drew a big amateur field. And then I think I raced Vineman that year, Captex, 70.3 Worlds, and I had raced Kona again that year. So it was a pretty stacked schedule, and I qualified for my pro card at South Beach and at Vineman. So I knew I could qualify, but just because you qualify doesn't mean you have to take it or need to take it.
Right.
And you have a year from that point that you qualify to take it. So I waited, and I didn't take it that year, and didn't take it in 2014, and then kind of pushed myself up against a wall knowing that I wanted to race in 2015. And
Mm-hmm.
in 2014, the year didn't play out like I expected it to. I targeted Atlantic City had a challenge race, a challenge full. I had targeted that for trying to get my pro card there, and got sick going into the race, and that didn't happen.
Mm.
So then had to make some adjustments to the schedule and went up to another challenge race. I think it was in Ohio or something. Yeah, I did that. Like, it put me in a bad spot of like racing back-to-back weekends where I raced that. Then I flew to New York City and guided Aaron Scheides at the New York City's triathlon, and then flew back to Milwaukee and raced age group nationals. It ended up being a lot of travel. It
Yeah, that's a
ended
ton.
up punching the pro card, but it wasn't ideal in how I expected the season to play out. So
Yeah. What was that journey like as you started to like you took it and then the seasons to come? Because I know that COVID happened and you had a little bit of remorse just in how that all played out because you felt like you really had started to turn a corner and that you were able to perform a bit more to your believed potential.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change anything looking back on it now. I think I left not knowing that I was leaving the professional field or like racing
Yeah.
at a high level. So I think that was kind of a good thing. I was able to race and focus on it from 15 until 2020. And I think that accident in 18 obviously set me back a bit, but I made a coaching change at that point and started working with Julie Divins. And we were in Las Vegas for a training camp basically as COVID was breaking out. And I started feeling good in the pool at that point and felt like I was making some progress, which was probably one of the few times that I felt really good in the pool.
Yeah.
And so that was a bit disappointing to like start to feel that and then have the pools shut down for
Yeah.
the foreseeable future. And as a non-swimmer, just that amount of time out of the pool was not
Yeah. Not
great.
ideal.
And then we were moving from the UK to Alabama in June of 2020, and
Big move.
the kids were 3 kids at young ages at that point. I just realized that I wanted to be home on the weekends with them rather than
Mm.
being out training every weekend. I think if we moved to a Boulder or Bend or San Diego, I could have structured the training a bit differently and done some shorter stuff on the weekends and done longer stuff during the week in more of a group environment. But yeah, we moved to Alabama and there's not a training squad there. So
Yeah.
um, that was a big reason. I was just tired of training by myself. A lot of my training over the years had been done by myself. I was lucky to link up with a few people over the years to train with, but it was still on a somewhat inconsistent basis. So
Yeah. Why Alabama? What was in Alabama?
my wife had a military training course down there at the time, so
Okay.
just a 1 year course. So we moved down there for a year, and then we moved up here to DC area, and we've been here for 2.5 years now. So
Yeah. So you guys married, you have 3 kids. Obviously, you convinced her to be a part of that journey, but how did you meet her and convince her? Like, what was that story like?
we met in Korea back in 2012.
Okay.
So yeah, back in the early days when I was just not just getting into the sport, but I was just developing the sport. So yeah, and we were both getting out of the military kind of at that point. She stayed in the reserves, and then she went and worked on a PhD at Oxford. So
How did you meet her, though? Was it like across
yeah,
the
just
room?
a mutual friend, and she
Okay.
was in the triathlon space at the time as well. So she was training and racing.
Nice. She's still doing this career right now, right?
She's still in the reserves for the Air Force. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And is she racing as well?
No, she raced just before our first kid was, or not just before he was born, but just before she got pregnant was her last race. So
Yeah.
yeah, 7 years ago.
Okay. Nice. So I want to ask you a little bit about your identity, because you have reinvented yourself several times through just the different things that you've done. And I want to touch a little bit on after we talk about this, just all of the different hats that you are wearing and how you got involved with those. But was that process hard for you, especially after leaving the military and then stepping away from being a professional triathlete? Like those big transition points, what were those like?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back from being a civilian to transitioning to the military, um, that's probably the biggest shell shock of all of them.
Mm,
It wasn't anything that I didn't expect, but it was a big change in life there. And then the military to triathlon, like jumping out of the military to try to race professionally in triathlon I don't think it was bad of a transition because I was already racing for so long at that point. So I already kind of knew what to expect and I'd already traveled quite a bit. And I think I had set myself up to know what that transition was going to be like.
mm,
Um, and then, like I said, the racing to not racing just was more or less forced on me. It wasn't a choice.
yeah,
And so that wasn't as hard as it would have been. And I think I've been pretty lucky and fortunate that I've been involved in the sport since then, and I've still been able to go to races. And a lot of the people I was racing with are still racing, and just still being around events and stuff definitely has helped with that transition. I think if that wasn't the case, I think it would have been a lot harder.
sure. If somebody came to you and was like, Brad, we have this really amazing position in the military. You're going to get to be paid really well, and you really would fit in an X area. Would you even consider it?
No, not at all.
No. Okay.
One, luckily it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And two, I don't see myself putting back on a uniform at this point.
Yeah.
I don't have any desire to do so.
Yeah. Well, so I read that you have taken on more of the position of being a bit more focused on the family and being the priority man when it comes to getting the kids to extracurricular activities or being home just a little bit more and kind of in that stay-at-home dad-ish role. Is that still the case to this day?
I would never say I was like a stay-at-home dad. The kids go to our youngest is in a Montessori, and I have a great setup in the sense that they're there 9 to 5, basically, is kind of my free time, and then depending on what extracurriculars are going on. Like right now, we have gymnastics on Mondays,
Okay.
and we have ice skating on Thursdays.
Oh, wow.
So that cuts into more of like a 4 o'clock stop, 4:30 stop for me. But yeah, it's very much just dependent of what's going on for the kids. The two older ones are in after school program, which they don't like being picked up early from. They like being with their friends and,
Oh, yeah.
and having fun there. So it's one of those things that you pitch up a little bit early one day and they're mad at you for showing up early. And then
Yeah.
some days they're asking you why you're
Yeah.
later. And you're like, well,
Depending on how their day's going.
which way do you want it? Like, I'm happy to get you earlier if you want, but then you yell at me for getting
Yeah.
you early. So,
That's so funny. I was at the pool the other day and there was a couple of kids swimming around in the lane next to me during the open swim, and one of the boys comes up, pulls his goggles up as he's sitting next to the other boy, and he's like, "Mom, please, just 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes." And just reminded me of those days of, yeah, like you were saying, it's interesting how kids, what they want will change based on their attitude, but somehow they externalize that and be like, "Oh, you're the problem. I want you to fix this."
yeah.
So are you still cool with your kids? Are you like, or are you getting to
Yeah,
the age where you're not as
they
cool?
still want to hug and kiss me before they leave and stuff, and I still get
Yeah.
bedtime kisses and bedtime cuddles, and
Yeah.
I haven't lost my cool factor yet. So
Yeah. You like being a dad?
yeah, it's great. It's just been we're kind of into the what I call the good ages now. Once the now 4-year-old became more independent, that kind of opened up a lot of opportunity stuff. I'm fortunate that if I'm home with them just by myself, I'm able to get down and get in a 45 to 60 minute ride, and they'll come down and interact with me while I'm riding, or they'll stay upstairs and kind of do their own thing in the living room, and they fight pretty minimally. So,
Yeah.
but whoever is getting picked on will quickly come downstairs and let me know. And yeah, it's good. Our middle daughter, she'll come down and do some yoga and stuff while I'm riding, or she'll sit
Oh,
here and
cool.
read to me. They're very much involved with everything. So
Yeah. What does she like to read to you?
she was reading. There's a Spider-Man book she's been reading, so
Okay.
she was reading that the other day. Yeah, she's really starting to love reading, and she's very big into drawing and art. So
Yeah.
yeah, she's one that probably puts down the electronics the most and does uh, other things, which I think is pretty rare these days for
Yeah.
kids to want to be doing the other things. But
She's the middle daughter. How old is she?
she's 6. She's in first grade. So
Wow. Any future athletes? You said ice skating, gymnastics.
yeah, I kind of just throw them at everything.
Yeah.
Let them. I don't let them decide necessarily at this point what they're going to do. It's more what works with our schedule and just giving them the opportunity to try and do multiple things. I think is the best way about it. I don't want to see them specializing in anything necessarily. They would have to be really passionate for me to let that happen or want that to happen. I would rather see them, just continue to do multiple sports. And if they do become more passionate about one thing, then that's fine to be practicing that thing when you're not actually playing it or in season for it. But
Mm.
I still want them active doing something every season per se.
Yeah. That's awesome. With triathlon, have you given them the opportunity at any age yet to be able to jump into that at all?
We haven't had. I guess I haven't seeked out the opportunity for them to do a triathlon. they can all swim. The 4-year-old probably struggles the most with swimming just from an age standpoint, but
Sure.
the two older ones are picking it up more and more. I think finding a swim program for them in the next 2 to 3 years is probably on the cards. It's just, again, when it works with timing
Yeah.
and if that is something they want to stick to. But I would like to see them get into that, just because it's one of the things I hold against my parents was not putting me into a competitive swim program.
Yeah.
But
Gotta
that could
develop.
very well burn me out, and I may have never made it to triathlon just from being burned out. So we'll see when that happens for them. I think it is something that I'd like them to try and see how much they enjoy it. But we spend a lot of time at the pool in the summer, so they get plenty of time there. And our son loves the ocean, and he's already been surfing a few times and really enjoys that. So I see him, I see him in wanting to do swimming and enjoying it. So
yeah. So I'm 31, planning on having kids in the next couple of years or so. So do you have any fatherly advice for me?
Whew. I don't like giving parenting advice. Actually, it's a taboo thing, I feel like, but
everyone's different. But
yeah, there's always two things that whenever somebody's going to have a kid that I always recommend, and it's funny. One's just a phone app that helps you track diapers and feeds. We thought we were going to do
and feet
and feeds like feed like bottles and breastfeeding.
Oh, feeds, got it. Yeah,
more so for probably your partner to use as well. But it syncs between both devices, and in the what I call the foggy, hazy first couple weeks of your first kid, you can't remember the last time you changed their diaper, and just being able to pull up the app and see when it was.
Yeah.
Or there's when's the last time they took a crap is another one.
That's super practical.
You forget when that last time was, and then sometimes you get a bit concerned when it's been. I think our son went 7 days at one point. So
how long?
Yeah, 7 days. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! What do? You give him some X-Lax and shake them upside down?
I think we used apple juice or something. It was it's one of the more shocking experiences as a parent. Was like, hold on, do we miss something? No, but that's another thing. It's just having friends or developing a core group of parents that are having kids around the same time as you was super useful for us.
Yeah.
In the UK, we went through like a parenting class, and that group of people like started a text message group. And then my brother had his son's 4 days younger than ours. So I had him as another sounding board of like, he was going through the same phases at the same time. And then funny enough, DC Rainmaker,
really?
does all the tech reviews and stuff. Him and his wife, Bobby, between us, we have 6 kids total, and there's like 58 or 52 days between all 6 kids.
Wow.
So we had all of our kids very close together somehow. And so they've become better friends over the years. And I coach Bobby now, and they're just good friends, and they've been good sounding boards as we go through these stages of life with the kids.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah, that's super, super practical. I would have never thought about the feeding and.
Yeah, sorry, there was 2 things. So there's the feeding app, and the other one is this. Well, you'll have to tell me when you're expecting your first kid, and I'll buy you one. It's the simple bathtub that we use. That's an inflatable ducky.
Okay.
It's practical. We got it because it was more of a space saver and being able to travel with it. But there's a lot of dumb bathtubs out there. I feel like that you drop your kid and it's hard plastic, and then they're getting hurt. To where this thing, like if they slip out of your hands, it's a blow up bathtub. So because
the skin's slippery, like that was fun. You got baptized.
It's a $10 or $15 bathtub that worked very, very well. So
I look forward to that.
Simple things, probably not the parenting advice you're expecting or wanting, but.
No, I actually wasn't wanting any. I was just, the older I get, the more I realize I better take advantage of these situations, because there's a lot of people ahead of me who I have the opportunity to ask that question. And if I can learn something, I literally learned something, that app and the tub. So I will take those into consideration and give you my address so you can ship me that little bathtub. So I want to talk about your hat and that bottle you have sitting back there, and that good product placement. Precision Fuel and Hydration. So we had on Andy not too long ago. His episode will actually be airing next week. And we're recording this on January 23rd. But you are in charge of the sponsored athlete program, ambassador program, and social media manager. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's currently what I'm doing, and I don't see that changing except social media. We're looking to bring somebody on.
Okay.
So social media is it was just something that I picked up and started doing because when I came on board, I
Non-existent.
was an athlete for them from 2015 onwards, and then they needed some help launching an ambassador program in a more formal capacity in 2018.
Okay.
And when I started doing that, social media had kind of just been an afterthought for the company, and we'd had such a good newsletter. And biased obviously, but to this day we still have a really good newsletter, and
It is pretty
it
good.
was
Yeah.
basically taking that content out of the newsletter and putting it onto social media, and then it's evolved from there on what we do on social media. But yeah, that's kind of where it started. I don't even know if we had an Instagram account in 2018 when I started. So things have
Well,
definitely changed, and we've organically grown that. And luckily, unluckily, not thrown a ton of effort at it, but we're
yeah.
starting to throw a bit more effort at it. And I think we're really going to see things take off. We have an in-house videographer and photographer on staff now, and that's really, really helping things. And I think we're only going to see things grow on the social media front because of that and because of bringing somebody on to focus on that. And then, yeah, the sponsored athlete and ambassador program has been my core focus since day one.
Yeah. Because you had experience being an athlete, and then did you seek out the position, or did they offer it to you kind of in your transition? How did that happen?
No, I was still racing. I mean, I've always worked a part time job since kind of the last year or two in the military. I was working for a nonprofit that
Okay.
was in the endurance space and military space, and then kind of set that down and started coaching at the same time that I was leaving that, and then coached for 2 years, I think, before PH approached me. But in between that, I worked for another startup that was doing like an energy powder called Firestar Energy, and they were out of the UK and the Oxford area. Um, and yeah, so I've always done something else. And yeah, so the guys kind of knew that I was not just racing and always had something else going on. And
Hmm.
they approached me and asked if I was interested. And yeah, we've started small then and kind of have grown it over time.
Yeah. So, what all does it entail to be like both of those programs, the director of it? Like, what are you doing on a day to day basis?
So we get a lot of applications of people applying to be at the lower level ambassador levels, and even pros filter through that application process as well. But yeah, just managing the incoming applicants and then managing all of our current ambassadors and professional athletes. So obviously this time of year is kind of the busy season for
Hmm.
me, just re-signing everybody and signing new athletes. And then kind of just making sure our roster has good balance and looking to bring athletes on in some sports that we didn't have a lot of athletes before, and just growing the overall program kind of in line with the growth of the brand.
Yeah.
It's kind of what the scope of that is, and then a lot of event travel through the season, just being at events and supporting athletes on the ground, and on the race course as much as possible, which is more so on the ultra running side. We're starting to incorporate ourselves more into our athletes' teams and crews,
Yeah.
and just being there for them along the race course and being able to help out and lend an extra hand. So yeah, don't think I've missed anything there. That's kind of the key roles, and then lastly is just really working with the marketing team and finding ways to get the content out of the athletes that we have,
Yeah.
and working with our sports science team and ensuring that we have a good grasp of who's racing, when they're racing, and being able to dive into their post-race analysis of their fuel and hydration intake, and kind of building the what we call case studies off the back of that.
Yeah. And
Which
you guys publish those case studies to a degree, right? Like on all the social media. I've seen some of this come through. Here's how many grams it took an hour. Here's how many milligrams of salt. Here's how much da da da.
yeah, that's all. We have a database on the website, so there's over 400 of those published on the website, and then yeah, those get turned into social graphics that get pushed out as well. And yeah, we're just kind of refining that process and making sure that the data is accessible to the customers and to just fans of the sport and fans of the athletes.
Is there any real sizable, you may not be able to answer this, but sizable competitor in that space? Because there's a hand over fist nutrition companies and everybody's packaging sugar a billion different ways. But precision fuel and hydration like seems to really be trying to dial in the scientific side, like what you're saying with the case studies, and when you can go on the website, sign up, enter in kind of your sweat test results, and it'll give you recommendations. Is there anybody else doing that even remotely to the level that you guys are doing that?
I'm not sure. It's kind of out of my lane. I mean, I keep my pulse on the industry and stuff to an extent, but there's some other people that are, I think, I shouldn't say trying to do it. They're doing it. It's just about what the output is and what their goals are with it. We're really focused on. We've aligned with some key events and partners that we integrate in that plan for them and for their athletes that are doing their events to use, and that's definitely become really helpful. Kind of helping athletes plan for their races. A lot of people are underestimating the amount of carbs and the amount of hydration and sodium that they need, and it's kind of opened their eyes up to what they need. So it's
Yeah.
good.
So what makes someone a good contestant for or contender for becoming a low level ambassador and also a professional like athlete on your
For
program?
us, from step one, it's always that you're a genuine user of the product. You get quite a decent amount of people that apply with never using the product. And so that's always step one is making sure that they're using the product, enjoying the product, and seeing value in the product. And then at the professional level, it's about, do you need help with your fuel and hydration program? And are you able and willing to work with our sports science team and kind of bring us into the fold of being part of your team? There's athletes that we're very, very hands-on with from that side of things. And there's some athletes that we work with for a couple months and they they figure it out and they know what they need to do. And we're a bit more hands-off, but still definitely there to help them when different scenarios pop up for their races in terms of climate or altitude or different distance or a new distance for them or a new start time. Like they're not used to racing in the afternoon, and we're there as a sounding board for them to kind of walk through what to do and how to change that. But yeah, it's basically making sure that the first thing is always that they're a genuine user of the product and that they enjoy using it. And from there, it's really dependent on the sport. Kind of geographical location plays into it a bit. I mean, us being a British company, we already have a lot of athletes in the UK, and we're growing in the US pretty significantly. So that helps when our ambassador program is growing in line with our growth. Definitely helps.
Yeah, for sure. With your um the contracts that you have to set, are you, because you're the director of that program, are you the one setting like, okay, here's the compensation amount, here's the product allowance per so much per month or per race or stuff like that? Do you have like stipulations that you have to abide by, or are you creating those guidelines?
I mean, the program's been built from the ground up, but it's a team effort on who we're going to work with. It's not I'm not calling the shots there. I building out what I think is a great roster, what we think is a great roster, and we sit down at a table. There's 3 to 4 of us that'll sit down to discuss what we see. It's our 2 co-founders and then our marketing director sit down and discuss kind of athlete by athlete. It's a process that we've evolved every year and are starting to get better at as time goes on. But now, obviously, the number of inquiries is significantly increasing. So it's becoming a more time involved process. But yeah, we're getting to a good place. It's been great to build the roster that we built and have the athletes that we're able to work with.
Yeah. Are you allowed to say how much revenue Precision Fuel and Hydration brought in last year?
No, of course not.
Why not? That's such a fun statistic. How many
I
pounds
mean,
of sugar?
you already interviewed Andy, so maybe Andy told you that.
I actually can't remember if I asked him that question or not. I was like, did I ask him that question? I don't think I did, but I should have.
No, we do have a funny stat that we kind of talk about every year about how close we are to filling up a 50-meter Olympic-sized pool with gels,
Oh, really?
and like the amount of gels we've sold if we filled up the Olympic-sized pool yet. So I'll let you know once that Olympic-sized pool's been filled up.
It hasn't been filled yet. When did you guys start doing the gels?
That was in 2021.
Okay, yeah. So it
Yeah,
was
it's still
like that long.
fairly new. Kind of COVID was the year that we looked at expanding into fueling and kind of started to make that happen and make a big push there.
Yeah, because it was precision hydration and it became precision fuel and hydration.
Yeah, the rebrand was done in 2022,
Okay.
January of 22.
Yeah.
Coincided with the launch of the PTO partnership that we did for 2022. So
Okay, yeah,
that's
with
always
your stuff all over the banners.
that's how I think back to when the rebrand happened.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's when I first heard about it. I don't remember how it came across my desk at some point where I ended up getting an email where it's like, oh, you should figure out your results and analysis and da da da. So yeah, cool stuff. So tell me a bit about KLS coaching, and then
Yeah,
if you have to run simulation.
KIS. Keep it simple.
KS. I'm so sorry.
No worries. Yeah, it's with me and Scotty DeFilippis.
Yeah, who was your coach for a long time?
Yeah, Scotty coached me from 2010. I actually met him at that first 70.3 in China in April of 2009, and then he started coaching me October, November of 2010.
Okay.
And he was on a team called Team TVB back then. It was ran by Alex Bach, who runs Coup Cycles now, and
Oh
then
yeah, some sweet looking bikes. Yeah.
Brett Sutton was the coach of that squad. So it's a bit of the history of triathlon there, but their professionals started coaching online in that kind of middle of 2010 timeframe.
Okay.
And I was looking to step up to Ironman, and I was wanting to coach for that next step. And I'd already met him and kind of stayed in touch with him, and he was coaching. So, he coached me from 2010 all the way through fall of 2018. And we launched KIS in 2016, if memory serves correctly. And so it's himself, me, and then we have another business partner, Sam Cardona. And then we have other coaches as well. His wife, Carrie Lester, coaches for us. And then
I've heard that name.
Keith Watson, who was formerly at Peakswear and who now works at Vasa Trainers, the swim trainer. And then we have, there's a few other people that have been through being coached by Scotty or through one of the KIS coaches who have come on board and coached with us. Brittany Vokey is another pro athlete that coaches with us. So yeah, it's been fun, kind of grow things organically there, and it's been good. Coached numerous athletes over the years and had a lot of fun in the process, and just enjoy helping people accomplish their goals and finding ways to balance triathlon and life. I think there's a lot of plans and coaches out there that kind of give you the plan that gets you to the finish line the fastest, but it may not keep you in the sport the longest, and it may get you a bit out of balance. And kind of we look to balance life and build a plan around people's busy life, and kind of work with them in navigating that balance and helping them be able to
keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple. So
that's great. So first, with the amount of athletes that you guys coach, how many are there, and is it primarily focused on elite or age group, or do you have any delineation?
No, we coach anybody and everybody. Me and Scotty look at the applicant or like the applications that come through or when somebody inquires, and we try to find the best fit for them if they don't have somebody in mind already. And then we kind of navigate them to that coach and let them see if it's a good fit and kind of go from there. Scotty's coached pros over the years. He just depends what his roster is at the current time, if he has anybody or doesn't have anybody. He coached Carrie for 5 or 6 years, so that was probably the best success that we've seen him have, with Carrie being multiple top 10s in Kona and winning numerous Ironmans and stuff. So he's taken a few amateurs and turned them pro, and taken Carrie. And he was fortunate with Carrie in a lot of ways, that one, it's his partner, so he gets to see her every day, but two, they both trained under Brett together, and so he already had some insight on what worked and what didn't work for her, and had some ideas on what to change. And yeah, it was fun to watch them have the run that they did together. It's really impressive.
Yeah, for sure. When you changed from Scott to Julie, was that, I guess, why and how did you navigate that? Because I know it's not easy.
Yeah, it's never, I think anybody would be lying to you if they say it's easy to leave a coach, especially somebody that you've been with that long.
Yeah.
And then for me, it was even a little bit more complicated with having the business together as well. It was a process. I was planning on doing it at the end of 2018, the season. Kind of, I always think the end of the season is the best place to kind of make change.
Yeah.
But then I got hit by the car, and that kind of sped up the process a little bit.
Mm.
Um, I obviously talked to Carrie a bit about it ahead of time because I know her and knew her really well then, and she was a good sounding board for it as well. And I'd interviewed a few coaches, and one of them just right off the bat is a really well respected coach, and he had just said like, you need to go talk to Scotty. Like Scotty knows you better than anybody else. Like ask him who he thinks would be a good fit for you.
Mm.
And that was probably some of the best advice that I'd gotten. So yeah, I went straight back to Scotty, and I opened up the conversation there and kind of started navigating that, and kind of told him who I planned on talking to and why I thought those people would be possible good fits. And I ended up coming to the conclusion on Julie after it was all said and done. I didn't have a big list of people that I interviewed. I mean, I was in a pretty unique situation, living in the UK, having 3 kids. And I always tell people, when you're looking for a coach, don't try to find the best coach in the world. Try to find the coach that's having the most success with an athlete like yourself. And at that time, you looked at Julie, and she coached Tim Don to one of the fastest Ironman times, if not the fastest Ironman time to date at that point. And he had small kids. And not that I was anywhere near the athlete of Tim Don, but she was coaching people that had kids, that were balancing a full-time triathlon career. And she was coaching top age groupers, where a lot of people would say maybe I was more of a top age grouper than a professional, but she was coaching people that were like me and kind of the same speed and kind of same accomplishments and that kind of same lifestyle setup. And I think that's what was probably the biggest draw to her. And then just her having 2 or 3 camps a year was something that was also that drew me to her, was being able to get out of the UK into some camps and be surrounded by great athletes was definitely a big draw.
How do you think that those 2 coaches shaped the way that you coach?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of it when I told Scott I wanted to have a change. Is like, he was coached by former coaches in college, and then Brett Sutton, Siri Lindley. He worked a little bit with Matt Bottrill as well. And so he had the ability to have his like coaching style shaped. And that's one of the reasons that I was looking to make a change. I knew I didn't have many years left in the sport. I wanted to see how somebody else did things. Yeah, Scotty very much came from the keep it simple mindset, kind of Brett's methodology of, just stacking training week after week, month after month, and it's going to make you better, which is a lot of still what I hold true today. And with Julie, it was a bit more diving into the weeds and kind of doing more structured bike workouts that had more purpose and very targeted and focused power numbers. And that was, appreciated from my standpoint. When I came to Scotty, I already had a power meter and he hadn't been using one. I was like, hey, I want to use a power meter here. And he was just like, I want to use effort. And so we kind of mixed the both for the first couple of years. And then he slowly adapted to using and working power into his coaching. And so, he evolved with me as an athlete over time, and his coaching skills only got better over that time frame. And then with Julie, I mean, her kind of results spoke for herself. So,
yeah. Like I was saying, I had Julie on, her episode just aired, and it's kind of blown up with how many people have been listening to that one compared to others. And I guess I didn't really realize what a legend I had until after I had already kind of had the podcast with her. But she seemed super, I feel like I could talk to her like a mom. Like she's my mom. And I hope that doesn't age her too much, but she's got just that way about her that's like very comfortable, but also like she'll smack you on the wrist if you do something wrong. Do you think that's true?
I was smacked a few times on the wrist probably. I was lucky that when we were out in Kona this year, I got out and was able to ride with her and Laura Sedal a bit leading up during race week. And it's always good to be around Julie. She's wealth of knowledge and just very humble. Is I think probably the reason why you didn't know you had a legend sitting before you.
Yeah.
She's very, very accomplished, and definitely, like you said, I wouldn't say that it's like talking to my mother by any means, because she's very easy to talk to and very understanding and just very caring person.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I hope she doesn't take that wrong, Julie. If you hear that, I'm not saying you're like my mom. Just comfortable. So I'm curious, and this is coming from kind of a personal interest, because I recently just switched coaches, and something I've really been trying to figure out how to do is like lean into the trust of the new coach, because I, kind of did the interview process and I understand the philosophy to a degree. And there's some stuff that's different, but it's been harder for me to like, okay, I just need to trust this. And I'm working on it. But for you, and I guess one more thing, kind of some of the philosophies that I originally started triathlon in 3 or 4 years ago. They become a part of my wheelhouse and how my brain works. I'm like, well, this is the way to do X. Like that seems like the only way. And then like I get a new coach and that's really challenged. So did you have any philosophies that you dropped or changed your mindset on because of the way that Julie coached versus how Scotty coached? Scott.
No, I think I brought in kind of a mix of both of what they taught me. I don't think there's anything that I dropped necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there's things that were shaped along the way, and I can't necessarily pick out those to a T by any means, but my coaching and plans have evolved from both of them. And through that process of working with Julie Moore, kind of what workouts worked for me and finding ones that were working for certain athletes of mine has definitely been part of the process and part of the change.
Yeah, good answer. So, for anyone who is thinking about being a coach or looking for a good coach, do you have any coaching tips?
I mean, being a good coach is there's I don't know. I'll probably get criticized for this one. I think there's two ways of becoming a coach that you can lean into. You either go the route of being a good athlete, which doesn't mean you'll be a good coach, but you can lean on that results based kind of resume, and you having success kind of draws people into you, and that's the path that I went. I didn't go to, and the other path that I'll talk about in a second is I didn't go to USAT and get a coaching certificate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Probably been interviewed by 300 athletes at this point, and I've never been asked what certificates or education I have.
Yeah, it doesn't
I'm
matter.
more asked about what athletes I'm coaching. Have I ever coached somebody like them? Um, do I it's some more like specific questions around planning and stuff. Do I schedule an off day? Things like that. Not what certificates do you have and what's your degree in. And so there's the path of like leaning into your success and kind of just finding some athletes that trust you and want to get better. And some people do that by coaching an athlete for free, or once the 10th person's asked them to coach, then they finally give in and decide to coach. It took me a while. I was referencing people to Scotty for the longest time because I wasn't wanting to coach. But I had the same person continue to ask me and kind of got me off the ground and got me into coaching because they wanted me to coach them. Um, yeah, and those people that are looking for a coach, I think, like I said, the biggest thing is finding a coach that's having success with somebody like you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the number one thing, in my opinion, is you don't need Julie to be coaching you if you're a middle of the pack to back of the pack athlete. It doesn't mean that Julie can't coach you, but I think you'll find other athletes that have or other coaches that have more success with people living that type of lifestyle where Julie or Scotty or myself may have more success with people that are training 7 days a week and wanting to put in 15 to 20 hours. I mean, I think the three of us have probably all had success with people across the board, but you look at Julie, she's had a lot of success with elite level athletes at a very high level. I've had some mixed success with people trying to get to Kona and trying to get to world championships. And then I've had success with 60-plus-year-old women that are wanting to race well in their age group. And I've had success with people doing their first Ironman. So I put myself a bit more across the board. I haven't really leaned into one specialty per se. But I think there are coaches out there that are very, very good with a specific type of athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's easy to figure out. You look around at your peers as an athlete and find out who's having success or who do you see making big jumps in performance. And typically that's tied back to, well, they made a coaching change or they got a coach for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people will find more success once they get a coach.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's kind of finding that right fit that's going to get the most out of them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Brad, thank you so much for jumping on and letting me ask some questions about your life and getting to hear about what's all been going on. and what
Yeah,
is to come. I don't think I missed any of your hats, did I?
yeah, I'm doing a bit of sales at Slow Twitch
That's
with Eric
right.
Lynn. So yeah, that's one of the other hats. Yeah, I've been a big long time user of Slow Twitch, so it was an easy fit to go over there and help him out a bit. So that's been fun.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a learning experience and learning more about the industry. But yeah, it's fun. So I know it's been long already, but
That's
um,
all good.
yeah, yes, that's been good. Just selling ads over there and creating partnerships for brands that want to advertise and work with Slow Twitch and the many different things that are going on at Slow Twitch. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you haven't done a story on the history of Slow Twitch,
I reached out.
definitely
Yeah. Can you help me? Because I reached out to the founder. I forget his name.
Dan Infield.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and talked to him a little bit on LinkedIn, and he was like, "I don't do podcasts anymore. I don't do media."
Yeah, I
So
think, I mean, if Dan's not willing to get on, I can push you over to Eric, and I'm sure Eric would be interested in coming on.
yeah, no, that'd be super interesting because that's like a little bit before me, and like my first coach, he like lived and breathed triathlon through Slow Twitch forums,
Yeah,
which is a little bit older style. Because I remember growing up and doing different types of forums for video game stuff, and like that was the popular way, and it's still very active. Like I go on there every once in a while. So yeah, that'd be super interesting if you wouldn't mind. That'd be cool.
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's more than just a forum these days, which is kind of the tagline I've come up with, but it's definitely known for its forum.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's a lot of cool things going on there. So.
Well, we'll check it out and we'll make sure to link it along with Precision Fuel and Hydration and everybody else. But thank you so much, Brad.
No, thanks, Seth. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Brad Williams for coming on the show today. It was such an awesome opportunity to get to know him, hear about the different hats that he's wearing, some of his upbringing, the things that he's been through, the things that he's done, and the things that he's going to do. Also, just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you made it to this far in the episode, you are awesome. If you are watching or listening on any platform that allows you to like, subscribe, comment, or leave the notification bell on, please do that. If you're on any of the podcast platforms, if you don't mind giving us a review, that would be super helpful to us as well. All right. Thank you so much again to Brad and everybody at Precision Fuel and Hydration, and we will catch you in the next one.